Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was March 25th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Molt Cara Companiona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. Let's begin today's document. So today we have another document where there's not much going on inside the document itself, but some of its features make it interesting to talk about. It's a really short document. It begins with 2 lines on the bottom of folio 30R of Register 1751, the same register we were looking at yesterday, the secret seal register for Joan. And we're only about 30 folios in, so this is really, the start of this register still. Okay, well, I got distracted. There's 2 lines that start at the bottom of folio 30R, and then there are, on the next folio, the continuation of the letter, it only goes for 6 more lines. So we're super short here, and it's a brief letter that simply establishes credentials for a representative of Joan named Jaime Pallares or Pallates. And Jaime Pallates is going to journey to the city of Barbastro. That is a city that I had never heard of before today. And it turns out that it's a town that is halfway between Huesca and Lleida. So it's in the region that's around Saragossa. It's in Aragon. So really like the heartland of the realm of Aragon. And that's the reason why this letter is written not in Catalan, but it's written in Aragonese. And I have had very little experience with being able to recognize the difference between Catalan and Aragonese. I mean, Aragonese has a lot of features that make it way more like Castilian. So I should be at the point where certain things start to jump out at me, but they don't. So, all right, it's a learning process. I think one of the major tip-offs that this is Aragonese is actually at the end of the document. So the dating clause ends on the last line of the letter, and in this situation, the scribe Pere de Beniure, who has in previous letters decided that he wants to spell out the number 7, has here instead decided that he's going to write it in Roman numeral. So we've got every part of the number of the year, 1387, in Roman numerals. And then we've got com nostro pequeño agnello. So that word, it doesn't jump out as similar to the Castilian pequeño right away. It has the letters P-E-G-N-Y-O. And when you first look at that, it doesn't seem to have any resemblance to the Castilian word for small, pequeño. It does, though. It's very related. It is basically the same word, but just kind of spelled a different way. So it's just the small ring. And in Catalan, it would be petit anel, like we saw in yesterday's document. But here, oh, maybe that was, yeah, I think that was yesterday's document. Oh, goodness. Yeah, okay. Well, in yesterday's document, or one of the ones very recently, we saw petit anel is the Catalan version of what we in English would say small ring. And here we've got pequeño anillo. So the word for ring is spelled Aniello. And so that difference should alert me, operative word should, alert me that I'm not looking at a document in wholly Catalan or maybe in any part Catalan. There's all kinds of other clues in here, but I'm just not as well practiced with my Catalan to immediately have some of the other words jump out at me. And so that's really where the number one tip-off is, that this is in Aragonese. But the use of the Z is a feature of Aragonese. So if we look at line 4 on folio 30V at the end, we've got deseamos with a Z. And you're not going to see the letter Z like that in any Catalan document, I think. That would be rendered with a C with a cedilla, or maybe even just spelled with a C without the cedilla. So this is an Aragonese letter, and it is written in Aragonese. Why? Well, Shadow wanted to answer that question. It's written in Aragonese because this is a town that is deep in Aragon, and that's the language they have. So it's really interesting that when Joan is writing to the King of France, he uses Catalan, and when he's writing to the King of Castile, he uses Castilian. And I know, Shadow. And then when he's writing to the town leaders, the jurats and prohomens, honoribus is who this is addressed to, when he's... Okay, we're hearing you. We hear you. Shadow, let me finish. All right, when he's writing to them, the town leaders of what I think was a pretty small town, he's writing in Aragonese. So how did they make these decisions? It could just be that the scribes in the chancery had facility with these languages and didn't really feel comfortable writing in French. They felt comfortable writing in Latin, like when writing to the Pope in Avignon, but not French, apparently. So that's interesting. I would love to see if somewhere in these registers if there is a letter in French, but my guess is no. There were definitely letters that were read by them in Arabic. I don't think they wrote in Arabic, but they had the ability, at least a couple people in that chancery had the ability to read Arabic. And so that's something that became really important in relations with Granada, for example. Okay, so this was a multilingual context. Multilingualism was required. It was the baseline. It wasn't like an add-on, oh, yay, we get to kind of have some folks that can write in these different languages. Bonus. No, it was like not a bonus, it was a requirement. And there are many letters in Aragonese in the archive of the Crown of Aragon, and this is one of them. And all this one really says is, I think the crux of it is in line 3 of folio 30V, that you just have to give full credence to the things that this representative, Jaime Pallates is going to ask you to get done when he shows up with this letter in hand. And then I do like to track this when the different phrases they use for saying that the recipient of the letter should hear the words spoken by the representative as if the king or queen had said them themselves. In this case, we have the phrase por obra así como si nos personalmente vos lo deseamos. So, as if I personally had wanted you to do it. Sort of. That's a loose translation, but that's basically what it says. Personnellement is the word used, personally. So now the word personne is interesting because we've seen it in other cases, nostra persone as our body, like or us personally, in the context of some kind of injury that might have been done. And then if there's a loss that's happening to the realm, it is something that is to our corona, right? So kings to bodies, again, coming up. All right, well, I think, because this is pretty short and doesn't have any specifics, it's all just talking about obra or things being said, we have pretty much reached the end of this letter. Oh, I guess I can just say one more thing, that in the addressee line, we have Iuratis et Prohomens honoribus civitatem Barbastri. So it's really a catch-all for everybody who is a leader of this city. The Iuratis, the legal leaders, the magistrates maybe would be a good way to translate that, and then Prohomens, the town councilors, Prohomens, honoribus, the honorable, with honor. So, all right, that is a little bit more about the way that town leaders are referred to. Just for future reference, we could maybe compare it later on if we have. Oh, let's talk about actually the beginning of the letter really quick. Honoribus no, it's hombres buenos, good men. Yeah. All right, so all these terms for when the king is referring to the leaders of a town, and so we can maybe kind of track that a little bit and be able to make some conclusions about what the king might think of particular leaders of the towns in how he addresses them. But I don't know, it could just be a Aragonese custom use of the Aragonese language. So, all right, we're kind of limited in how much we can infer. I'm just, because there wasn't much to this letter, I'm just kind of doing a little riffing here, a little bit more than usual, maybe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt cara companiona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, like, what the heck was going on in Barbastro this time? Well, then I've done my job. Remember, the historian's notebook motto is dissatisfaction guaranteed. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, and to listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.